mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
Oh, beautiful for dreams that cease beyond the hills. Thine alabaster cities meet, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 9/11 Flag of Honor Across America Memorial. Today is a day to honor those who lost their lives on 9/11, as well as the first responders and service members who have lost their lives as a direct result of that day. It's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Byron Brown, a friend of the Buffalo Naval Park, to start us off this morning. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mcguire, and thank you for all that you and the members of the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park do for our community. Good morning. It is an honor to join all of you this morning to take part in the Flag of Honor Across America Memorial Ceremony to honor the 50 Western New York residents and all who died in the September 11th terrorist attacks. On this day, may we also honor the thousands of local first responders who went to New York City to aid in the immediate aftermath, as well as the thousands of local military members who served our country over the last 2 decades to prevent another 9/11, especially those who lost their lives and sustained serious injuries. I thank the Erie County Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, Erie County Department of Homeland Security, the Western New York Iraq Afghanistan Memorial, Explore and More, the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Children's Museum for their work to make Buffalo one of 60 sites across the United States to be part of this special observance. As we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the tragic events of 9/11 and the lives that were lost, this is a day that our nation will never forget. It is out of our darkest hours that we gain appreciation of how we are all interconnected. It is the respect for our differences that makes us stronger. It is the recognition of unity, equity, inclusiveness, and justice that will make our great city and our great nation resilient for many generations to come.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. My name is Terry Mcguire, and I have the privilege of serving as today's Master of Ceremonies. I currently serve as the chair of the board for the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. I'm also retired from the U.S. Army, where I served for over 28 years, 4 of those working at the Pentagon. For me, like so many others, 9/11 is personal. It resulted in the largest loss of life by a foreign attack on American soil, with 9 months of recovery, cleanup, and operations totaling 1.8 million tons of wreckage. Today is the combined effort of many organizations: Erie County, the Naval Park, the Western New York, Iraq, and Afghanistan Memorial, United States Coast Guard sector of Buffalo, the Erie County First Responder Community, and Explore and more. We are thankful for the support of EC 200, GEICO, Bank of America, and Ellicott Development. We are especially grateful to those many volunteers here today to support this endeavor, including those from the Erie County Retired and Senior Volunteer Program and AmeriCorps Ethos Program. The Naval Park's mission is to preserve, honor, educate, and inspire, and that's what we are here to do. We are here to preserve a critical and tragic piece of our collective history. We are here to honor those who lost their lives on 9/11, as well as those who lost their lives due to their service at Ground Zero, and those who made the ultimate sacrifice during the subsequent 20 years of combat. We are here to educate because as we hit this milestone of 20 years since that clear September morning, we are forced to reckon with our commitment to never forget, even as we have service members enlisting who are not alive on that day, and first responders who continue to get sick because of their service. And finally, we are here to inspire. The story of 9/11 cannot be forgotten. In the midst of horror and despair, there is a reminder of hope, patriotism, and of the nation coming together. Our nation will never look the same. Today's ceremony will last 2 hours and will run from the time of the first plane hitting the North Tower through the North Tower collapsing. At significant times throughout this morning, we will toll a bell and take a moment to pause. As you can see on the beautiful waters here of Lake Erie this morning, we are joined by the crew of the Edward M. Cotter fireboat, the oldest fireboat still in operation in the United States, and from what I'm told by Bill Ronaldo, in the world. They are starting this morning with 6 water cannons running, and as we hit each milestone, they will not be shut off until we are left with none. The 9/11 flag of honor memorial ceremony is occurring across America in 60 communities today. Each community was assigned 50 names, and here in Erie County, we knew we wanted to ensure we also recognize those with a tie to our area. Across the country, this ensures that every name will be read. We aren't just reading names today, we are also sharing a little bit more about the people behind those names. They were the parents sending their children off to school for the first time. They were the off-duty firefighters who just stopped by the firehouse that day for a cup of coffee when the alarm sounded, and grandparents flying to meet their newest grandchild. Financial analysts who showed up to work early to prepare on a presentation. They had families, friends, loved ones, hopes, and dreams that were cut short by an act of terror. The flag of honor contains all their names, and we are raising this flag today along with our nation's flag. Our Erie County flag of honor visited the 9/11 Memorial on Sunday, June 29th of this year, on that sacred ground where the Twin Towers once stood and where the 9/11 Memorial now stands. There has been a national level effort to make 9/11 a national day of service in honor of those who lost their lives. Today, you can donate blood with the American Red Cross or donate food to our food drive for Feed More, Western New York. This afternoon, you can connect with first responders and military by attending Honk for Heroes and engaging with various vehicles from local agencies. Admission today at the Naval Park and the Children's Museum is pay what you wish. So it's a great day to spend time with family and appreciate the blessings we all have and share. A special thank you to the Buffalo Niagara Concert Band who played for us this morning. As you can hear in the distance, we also have the Greater Buffalo Firefighters Pipes and Drums with us this morning. We are especially indebted to the Buffalo Fire Department, the Buffalo Police Department, and the Coast Guard for providing our color guards this morning, and to the Buffalo Fire Department and the Patriot Guard for this beautiful display of our nation's flag. The Sea Cadets will assist with planting flags to memorialize each of the 168 names we will be reading today. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce Buffalo's singing cop, Officer Mo Badger, to raise the flag of honor, memorializing all those who lost their lives on 9/11.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ray glare, the bombs bursting in air, us that star-spangled banner yet wait o'er the land of the free, hallelujah, and the home of the brave.
Buffalo Fire Department, out of guard. Post the colors. Coast Guard, out of guard. Forward, march.
Out of guard, right face. Forward, march.
Detail. Halt. Out of guard. Freeze it. Arm. Out of guard. Order. Arm. Buffalo Fire Department. Dismissed. Buffalo Police Department, out of guard. Order, arms. Parade, rest.
Again, we'd like to thank Mo Badger from the Buffalo Police Department for that fine rendition today, our national anthem. Thank you, Mo. Nice to know we have such talented officers in the City of Buffalo Police Department. On a side note, it's also good to see Bill Ronaldo today from the Buffalo Fire Department Chief. We served together in the 98 Division for several years, and it's good to see a familiar face out there. So thank you, Bill, for being here today. So between 7:59 and 8:42 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, 4 commercial flights took off. 2 from Boston, 1 from Washington, D.C., and 1 from Newark, all headed west for California. After takeoff, all 4 planes were hijacked by terrorists affiliated with Al-Qaeda. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Our volunteer readers today will include Kathy Lorenzo, a retired United Airlines flight attendant, Robert Mercurio, a Buffalo Police Department officer, Thomas Tabiri, a volunteer firefighter with the Sloan Fire Department with over 20 years of service, Senior Chief Nicholas Sutton with the United States Coast Guard, Joanne Thomas, one of our own here at the Naval Park and our gift shop manager, and an Army National Guard veteran who deployed to Ground Zero for a week after the attacks. Ensign Andre Clancy with the United States Coast Guard, the Buffalo Council member Mitch Nowakowski, a Buffalo State alumni, Joe Abston, former Army Sergeant and Confined Space and Rescue Recovery Worker at Ground Zero, David Schenk, Commissioner of the Erie County Department of Senior Services and a 32-year member of the Army Reserve currently serving as a Master Sergeant with the 7207th Medical Support Unit, and Brian Guy, Chief of the East Seneca Volunteer Fire Company and member of the Western New York, Iraq, and Afghanistan Memorial Committee. We will now hear from Dan Nevereth, Commissioner of the Erie County Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, representing the first responder community.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, please be seated. It's 8:46 a.m., September 11th, 2001. A cloudless blue sky stretches from New York City to Buffalo. But in the blink of an eye, the nation is devoured by darkness. The North Tower of the World Trade Center has been attacked. But for a short time, we maintain our innocence, as the initial reports are that it was a small plane, surely an accident. We would eventually learn that at 8:46, 5 hijackers crashed American Airlines Flight number 11 into the 93 through 99 floors of the World Trade Center. 76 passengers, 11 crew members, and hundreds in the building are killed instantly. The crash severs all 3 emergency stairwells and traps hundreds of people above the 91st floor. Within that same time frame, 8:46 a.m., New York City emergency dispatchers send police, paramedics, and firefighters to the North Tower. Battalion Chief Joseph Pfeiffer, 16 blocks away, looks into the sky and immediately knows he has something major. He instantly calls for a second and then third alarm, which sends 23 engine and ladder companies, 12 chiefs, and 10 specialized units to respond to crash at Box 8087, FDNY's reference to the World Trade Center. It should also be noted, at that point, the information that was delivered was vehicle drivers are instructed to park adjacent to the North Tower. Port Authority Police Department, responsible for the safety and security of the World Trade Center, had an immediate response. At 8:55, there's an announcement within the panicked South Tower. Your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen. Building 2 is secure. There is no need to evacuate. If you are in the midst of evacuating, you may use the re-entry doors and elevators to return to your office. I repeat, Building 2 is secure. By now, if you hadn't been watching on television, you no doubt had received many, many phone calls from friends saying, quick, turn on the television. So as we reflect 20 years later on the events of September 11th, the tragic, senseless loss of thousands of lives that day, Let us not forget also that it hit close to home. Let us not forget the selfless sacrifices of those first responders, fire, police, EMS, from right here in Western New York, that hours, days, and even weeks after the attack deployed to assist their brother and sister first responders in New York City. Let us not forget the impact on the health of those first responders who, despite understanding now, only now, the debilitating and for some lethal toxic exposure while at ground zero, if given a choice, would do it again. Let us not forget the national pride, the sense of duty and commonality displayed by almost every American. Let us not forget the uncertainty of what was to come next as units from throughout Erie County crossed the Hudson, headed down a deserted Sawmill Parkway toward the continuous plume that was Ground Zero. Let us not forget that back home, family members struggling still to grasp what they had witnessed just days before were now struggling with what their loved ones had volunteered to confront. Let us not forget that energy as we approached staging at Chelsea Pier, cheered on by well-wishers, returning what was needed the most, and assurance we are all in this together. Let us not forget the faces of our first responder family, summoned from every community, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and beyond, as teams prepared to deploy into the hot zone. Let us not forget our first impressions as we witnessed up close how evil the world can be. Let us not forget the subtle but weary nod of appreciation from FDNY, NYPD, and PAPD. Let us not forget the spontaneous donations of socks, work boots, gloves, and food because everyone wanted to feel a part of the recovery. Let us not forget all those involved, from the sounding of Box 8087 at 8:46 on September 11th, 2001 to 8:46, 2021. Let us not forget 20 years of sacrifice by those protecting us in this war on terror, especially those serving in the United States Armed Forces. Let us not forget those who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our country, in some cases too young on 9/11 to understand the impact it would have on their destiny. Let us not forget that this could have just as easily been Buffalo, New York. Let us not forget that regardless of municipality, the challenges of that day have been met with the same American spirit, courage, and selfless actions because at our core, it's in our DNA. Let us not forget, regardless of status, paid or unpaid, we are all professionals driven by a common understanding that there is a cause greater than us. I'll end with a quote from former President George W. Bush. In times, perhaps we will mark the memory of September 11th in stone and metal, something we can show our children as yet unborn, to help them understand what happened on this minute, on this day. But for those of us who live through these events, the only marker we will ever need is the tick of the clock at the 46th minute of the 8th hour of the 11th day.
Will Kathy Lorenzo, Robert Mercurio, and Thomas Tiberi please come forward to read the names?
First, John N. Humber Jr. John was a passenger, thank you. John was a passenger on American Airlines Flight 11. He was one of the first employees of the Environmental Protection Agency and served as an advisor to the World Bank. He had one son, Jordan, and was active in his community, including volunteering at a prison outreach program. Michael R. Horrocks. Michael was the first officer on United Airlines Flight 175. Michael served as an officer in the United States Marine Corps, where he was affectionately known as Rox. Michael is remembered by his wife Miriam and their children, Michael and Krista as a man who could always be trusted to do the right thing. Amy R. King. Amy was a flight attendant on United Airlines Flight 175 and grew up in a small town near Jamestown. She was a 1989 graduate of Southwestern Central School and a 1991 graduate of Jamestown Community College. She was extremely happy, kind, and fun to be around. She was a wonderful daughter, sister, and aunt, and had a great love for life. She enjoyed running, painting, and traveling. She was especially close to her longtime boyfriend, Michael Theroux, who also died in the crash with her nieces and nephew. Michael C. Theroux, Mac, was a flight attendant on United Airlines 175. He enjoyed writing and recording music and played many instruments, including the guitar, bass, piano, and drums. Michael and Amy lived together in Stafford Springs, Connecticut, and frequently tried to schedule flights together. Mike had one daughter, Gina. Robert Michael Shearer. Michael was a passenger on United Airlines Flight 175 with his beloved wife, Kathleen. Robert was a retired engineer and was passionate about his lawn maintenance, so much that his neighbors affectionately called him the Lawn King. Michael and his wife, Kathleen, were heading to California to meet their first grandchild, Shay, and visit one of their two daughters. Kathleen Shearer. Kathleen was a passenger on United Airlines Flight 175. Born in Buffalo, New York, Kathleen and her husband Michael had recently built their dream home in Dover, New Hampshire. Even after 39 years of marriage, the two still held hands. Kathleen was a retired doll maker and had been working on a quilt for her first granddaughter. Renee A. May and her unborn child. Renee was a flight attendant on American Flight 77 who loved to knit special blankets for friends and loved art. Renee was born in Buffalo and grew up in California before moving to Baltimore. Her fiancé, David, told the Washington Post that Renee was the nicest person he had ever met. Thank you.
Uhuru G. Houston. Uhuru was an officer with the Port Authority Police Department. Uhuru's son had started kindergarten only 5 days before the attacks. Although he could appear intimidating, he is remembered as an affectionate father with an artistic streak who was dedicated to providing a better life for his wife and their two young children. Anthony P Infante Jr. Inspector Anthony Infante Jr. served with the Port Authority Police Department. Anthony was in Jersey City attending a Port Authority meeting when the towers were struck, and he was one of many to rush to Manhattan to aid in the evacuation. Anthony was dedicated to his family, volunteered at a soup kitchen, and taught at his local church. Anthony was remembered by 9/11 survivors as a calming, comforting presence during the evacuation efforts. George G. Howard. George was a 16-year veteran with the Port Authority Police Department, where he served as part of the Elite Emergency Services Unit, a group he had helped establish. September 11th was his day off, but when he heard about the attack on the World Trade Center, he reported to help. George had also reported in on his day off in 1993, when the World Trade Center had been bombed. George was also a volunteer captain in the Hicksville Fire Department. George is survived by his two sons, Christopher and Robert. Stephen Hushko Jr. Steve was an officer with the Port Authority Police Department, where he had served for 16 years. He was an avid runner who finished the New York City Marathon in 2000, and the kind of person who never did anything halfway. Steve was a bass drummer in the Port Authority Emerald Society Pipes and Drums. Steve was close with his 4 children and his wife, Kathleen. He had planned to retire in 5 years to begin a second career as a nurse, where he could continue to help provide.
Philip T. Hayes. Philip was the Deputy Fire Safety Director for the World Trade Center and a retired FDNY firefighter. He was the second oldest of 16 children and a cornerstone of his family. On September 11th, Philip rescued children from a daycare center in 5 World Trade Center and then headed to the South Tower to direct people out of harm's way. Joseph G. Hunter. Joe was a firefighter with FDNY Squad 288. Joseph joined FDNY in 1996, fulfilling a lifelong dream of being a firefighter. A fellow Squad 288 firefighter described Joe as the sharpest guy I have ever worked with. Brian C. Hickey. Brian was a captain with FDNY Rescue 4. Brian started as a volunteer firefighter with the ultimate goal of becoming a professional firefighter. He served 4 years in the Air Force, where he attained the rank of sergeant, and after his discharge was hired by FDNY. He had just returned to service after being injured in the line of duty in June 2001. His wife Donna and their 4 children survived him. Terrence P Farrell. Terrence was a firefighter with FDNY Rescue 4, as well as an assistant chief with the volunteer Dix Hills Fire Department. Terrence was a bone marrow donor who had saved the life of a young girl in 1993. He had 2 children. William J. Mahoney. Billy was a firefighter with FDNY Rescue 4. He loved baseball and coached his children's baseball teams. Billy also played center field in 2 adult leagues. His wife Donna's name was written inside of his baseball glove for good luck. Peter Brennan. Peter was a firefighter with FDNY Rescue 4. He had proudly served with the NYPD. He was enthusiastic about fire service, and he served as a technical rescue instructor at the academy while also attending school for a degree in fire science technology. He loved his family and was eagerly awaiting the birth of his second child at the time of his death. Walter G. Hines. Walter was a captain with FDNY Ladder Company 13 in Manhattan. Walter enjoyed spending time with his 3 daughters and his wife Veronica, going on family vacations and golfing. Walter is remembered for his generosity of time and spirit.
Thank you. That second bell is in recognition for those on the ground in New York City and the reporters who are reporting on live television to try to make sense of what just happened. Initial reports were that a small plane had mistakenly hit the World Trade Center. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center, and it became very clear that America was now under attack. special group from our Fife and Drum Corps that was here today. Thank you for that great rendition. Our Buffalo Fire pipe and drum. Now we have Nicholas Sutton, Joanne Thomas, Andre Clancy, and Councilman Nowakowski come up to continue to read our names today.
Jonathan L. Lampy. Jonathan was a firefighter with the FDNY Squad 288. Jonathan had previously served as a New York City police officer before following in his father's footsteps as a firefighter. Jonathan was assistant chief at his community fire department on Long Island and loved to hunt, fish, and play hockey. Jonathan was the father of 2 young sons. Darrell Bronco Pearsall. Bronco was a firefighter with FDNY Rescue 4. He had dreamed of following in his father's footsteps and becoming a firefighter from the time he was a little boy. He was proud of his Irish heritage and played snare drum in FDNY's Emerald Society Pipe and Drums. He had just finished his shift on the morning of 9/11, but decided to respond along with the rest of his company. Peter A. Nelson. Peter was a firefighter with FDNY Rescue 4. He had served with the FDNY for 15 years and also volunteered as a 3rd Assistant Chief in Huntington Manor. He and his wife were expecting their first child when he died. His daughter was born on October 5th, 3 hours after his father's memorial service. Kevin C. Dowdell. Kevin was a lieutenant with the FDNY Rescue 4. Although he worked 2 jobs, he managed to find time to spend with his 2 sons and his wife, Rose Ellen. Kevin received many citations during his 20-year career with the fire department and had gone to Oklahoma City as a member of FEMA to assist in recovery of victims after the federal building was bombed. Paul T. Mitchell. Paul was a lieutenant with the FDNY Ladder Company 110. Paul's sister, Sue McCormick, requested his name for today's ceremony. Friends and family knew Paul as Big Daddy. He served with the FDNY for 15 years and had 3 prior citations for valor. In addition to his sisters Sue and Marie, he's survived by his 2 daughters and wife Maureen. Paul was off work on 9/11, but he stopped by the firehouse for coffee that morning and decided to go with his team. Frederick J. Ill Jr. Fred was a captain in the FDNY Ladder 2. Fred had 3 children with his wife Mary, including Frederick J. Ill III, who followed in his father's footsteps and became a New York City firefighter. Fred was also a staff sergeant in the Army Reserves. Fred is remembered by his children as a man who had 4 great loves: his wife and family, the church, the fire department, and the Army Reserve. Vincent G. Dans. Vincent was a member of the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit's 3rd Squad in the Bronx and a port security specialist 2nd class in the United States Coast Guard Reserve. Vincent had previously served in the Marine Corps Reserves. He had 18 years of military service and 14 with the NYPD. His wife Angela remembered him as someone whom helping people came naturally. He was the youngest of 9 children and loved his 3 daughters, including his 8-month-old. In honor of Vincent, a Sentinel-class cutter will be named the Coast Guard Cutter Vincent Dans and will be commissioned in 2023. Jeffrey M. Palazzo. Jeff was a member of the FDNY Rescue Squad 5 on Staten Island, as well as a machinery technician 1st class in the United States Coast Guard Reserve. Jeff joined the Coast Guard because he wanted to save lives. He made his first rescue at age 8 when he helped some boaters who had capsized while sailing. He loved his family, including his wife and 2 daughters, and enjoyed being in the outdoors, whether it was boating, fishing, or scuba diving. In his honor, the United States Coast Guard will be commissioning a Sentinel-class cutter named the Coast Guard Cutter Jeffrey Palazzo.
Michael B. Packer. Michael B. Packer. Michael was born in Buffalo, New York. Michael held a Ph.D. in mechanical engineering from MIT and was at the North Tower as the keynote speaker at a conference. He was a passionate musician and a talented piano and harpsichord player. He had 2 children with his wife, who described him as having a quiet optimism and great sense of humor and curiosity. Peter G. Wallace. Peter was born in Buffalo, New York, and worked on the 100th floor of the World Trade Center North Tower. Peter was a Marine Corps veteran who lived with his family in Lincoln Park, New Jersey. He loved being a grandparent to his 5 grandchildren and loved reading them the classics he had read to his own children, especially Dr. Seuss books. Montgomery M. Hord. Monty loved paying for purchases with $2 bills to see how cashiers would react. He and his wife Lisa had 3 young children they were raising in Manhattan after relocating from Chicago. Monty was dedicated to volunteering in his own community. Michael J. Horn. Michael was especially close with his brother Charles, who described him as a good guy with a great heart. Michael enjoyed camping, skiing, and spending time outdoors. He enjoyed entertaining others and made a grand entrance wherever he went. Matthew D. Horning. Matthew was a humble, caring, and giving man who loved animals, books, and the New York Mets. He graduated magna cum laude from James Madison University in 1997. He lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, and had recently started taking guitar lessons. Robert L Horoho Jr. Robert had followed in his father's footsteps to work at Cantor Fitzgerald. He was engaged to be married on May 4th, 2002 to his fiancée. His family remembers him as a wonderful son, a caring brother, a doting uncle, and a loyal friend who loved to socialize and make those around him laugh. Cantor Fitzgerald lost every employee who was at the office at the time of the plane strike, 658 in total. Aaron Horwitz. Aaron was able to find good in bad days and warmed the hearts around him with his sense of humor and antics. Aaron was described by his father as the kind of guy who could talk to a brick wall. He was only 24 years old on 9/11. Michael C. Howell. Michael loved to play tennis with his son Kevin, who remembers his father had a very good forehand. He was dedicated to his work as the Director of Management Information Systems. He and his wife Emily lived in Queens. Stephen L. Howell. Stephen and his wife Deborah both worked in the World Trade Center. Deborah made it out that day, but Stephen and his best friend Martin, who worked with him, did not. Stephen was a romantic and a dedicated son who was committed to supporting his aging father. Paul R. Hughes. Paul was born in Elmira, New York. He was a dedicated husband and father. Paul worked in the computer industry and loved tinkering with electronics. He was known as a man who could walk his coworkers through any computer problem in a down-to-earth human way. He was an avid Yankees fan. Robert T Hughes Jr. Bobby loved his job at Bank of America as a margins clerk. He also loved the St. Louis Cardinals. Bobby spent most of his high school summers volunteering at a camp for children with brain injuries. On September 11th, when the first plane hit the North Tower, Bobby stayed to help an older woman having trouble on the stairs. Bobby was only 23 years old. Thomas F. Hughes Jr. Thomas owned a company called Colonial Art Decorators and was at a meeting at Windows on the World on September 11th. His wife, Roseanne, described him as a person who lived life to the fullest. They had been married for 17 years and had 2 children.
Timothy R. Hughes. Tim and his wife Karen enjoyed restoring old homes as a hobby. Even with his time-consuming projects and busy work schedule, he still finds time to coach all 3 of his children in baseball, soccer, and other sports. He had a dry sense of humor and was the kind of person everyone wanted to be around. Susan Huey. Susan attended church regularly with her brother Gordon, who called her Sis. She was a graduate of Pace University class of 79 and worked as a financial analyst. Lamar D. Hulse. Lamar worked as a security guard in One World Trade Center. He lived with his grandmother, Gertrude, so that he could take care of her. Lamar was known as Big Man on the basketball court, where his weight allowed him to tower over the competition. Robert R. Hussah. Robert led a full life with his wife, Catherine, and his 2 sons. They enjoyed golfing, skiing, and riding mountain bikes as a family. Robert believed in honesty and integrity and led by example. Joseph A. Linnelli. On the day of the attacks, Joseph had gone to work early to prepare for a meeting, which was just part of who he was, responsible and prepared for everything. His family was very important to him, especially his baby nephew. Joseph was planning to marry his fiancée Monica the following September. Zutu Ibis. Zutu was born in Turkey and came to the United States when he was 18 years old. He worked his way up in the world, from delivering pizza and pumping gas to putting himself through technical school. His wife Layla, who is also from Turkey, and remembers her husband as a hard worker who worked to provide for her and his 2-year-old son. Daniel Ilkaniev. Daniel was born in Azerbaijan, where he studied to become a programmer at Baku State University. Daniel was described as a caring son and loving father and husband. He was an incredible chess player and also enjoyed martial arts and fencing. Abraham N. Lowitz. Abraham was dedicated to his faith and to his 5 children. He had a love of learning that he was committed to sharing with those around him. Christopher N. Ingracia. Christopher had a passion for sports and a quick sense of humor that he shared with those around him. He was a true athlete, having played varsity football, wrestling, and track, and even played football for 2 years at Princeton. His family best remembers him for his kindness to others. Paul Inella. Paul was remembered by those around him as someone who was concerned with other people's well-beings. He loved all sports and was very close with his fiancée and her son. Paul's wedding date was set for April 2002. Stephanie V. Irby. Stephanie had planned to take off on September 11th, but her brother noted she was too conscientious to miss work. She loved her 2-year-old niece, Cecilia, and her golden retriever, Charlie. Todd A. Isaac. Todd was described by his loved ones as a dedicated son, a loving brother, and a good friend. He was only 29 years old, but had already made partner at Cantor Fitzgerald. He enjoyed basketball, snowboarding, and making people around him laugh. Shai Levanhar. Shai was born in Israel and served in the Israeli military. He moved to New York City with his wife in 1992. When he arrived, he was inquisitive about everything in America and was quick to study. Shy was a husband, a brand new father, and just received his MBA when he died in the North Tower. Christopher E. Lunder. Christopher was married to his high school sweetheart and loved to entertain his friends and family. His wife, Karen, said he worked very hard, played hard, and had a zest for life. Melissa R. Vincent. Melissa left the town of Leroy in order to be in the heart of New York City. She loved the city and embraced being a New Yorker, including cheering for the Yankees and attending Broadway shows. Her mother, Lucille, described her as someone people like to be around. Melissa was only 28 years old on 9/11. Michael P. O'Brien. Michael was born in Utica, New York, and later received his MBA from University at Buffalo. He and his wife Rachel had 3 children, and he was a dedicated father. He loved spending time outdoors with his family, whether going on camping trips or coaching their soccer or baseball teams. In addition to his wife and children, Michael was survived by his parents, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. John P. Salomon. John loved his job and the people he worked with, but nothing came before his 3 young children. He coached his oldest son's soccer team, taught all 3 how to ride their bikes, and loved taking his oldest 2 golfing. John's mother, Madeline, and his grandmother, Rose, were both Western New Yorkers. Daniel R. Nolan. Dan enjoyed activities like skiing down mountains that had no trails carved into them and scuba diving as deep as possible. His wife, Renee, remembers him as someone who was not afraid to take risks. He was passionate about jokes. Dan had 2 young children, Jonathan and Caitlin. Brandon J. Buchanan. Brandon grew up in Honeo Falls, New York. As a young man, he was focused and extremely independent. He would practice lacrosse for hours, trying new skills out on the side of his family's barn. His family, including his parents, Sherry and Ron, remember him as a beacon of light. Brandon was only 24 years old on 9/11. Todd D Palino. Todd was a soccer star at Pittsford Minden High School and went on to play at Colgate. His friends describe him as a natural father to his 2 young children. 9/11 was his 2-year-old son Bennett's first day of nursery school, and 2 hours before the attack, Todd had called home to wish him a good first day. Todd's memory lives on through his children, his extended family, and through a special number 9 jersey at Pittsford Minden High School that is given to the player who best embodies the selfless leadership that Todd displayed on the field and in his life. Jeffrey J. Shaw. Jeff had recently taken a referee course in order to be able to officiate at his children's basketball games. He loved hunting and golf, but above all, he loved spending time with his family. Jeff was an electrician who had previously helped the evacuation effort when the World Trade Centers were attacked in 1993. Thank you.
Eric H. Isbranson. Eric gave everything he tried 150%, whether it was working or playing soccer, which were his 2 favorite activities. Eric grew up in the Boston area and missed living there with his friends and family close by. Michael R. Canty. Michael grew up in Schenectady, New York. He had a large family, including 16 nieces and nephews. He was preparing an elaborate marriage proposal for his girlfriend, Erin. H. Joseph Heller Jr. was a self-taught home remodeler. Along with his wife, Mary Jean, he purchased a major fixer-upper and set to work revitalizing his vision for the home. Joseph had 4 children ranging from the ages of 8 to 16 months year old. Leonard M. Castriano. Leonard was born in Buffalo, New York, and later moved to New York City, while his twin sister still lives locally. He was a Williamsville East High School graduate, as well as Erie Community College and Buffalo State. Leonard was described by friends as relentlessly positive, funny, and gregarious, and someone who brightened the lives of everyone he encountered. Stephen G. Hoffman. Stephen was born on Long Island and later attended Buffalo State College with his twin brother, Greg. They were both stars on the college lacrosse team. Stephen met his wife, Gabrielle, while in Buffalo, and they had one daughter, Madeline, who was 5 years old on 9/11. Stephen loved his family and surfing. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now hear from Captain Lexia Littlejohn, our sector commander for the Coast Guard sector of Buffalo.
Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, friends, colleagues, families of the fallen, fellow members of the military, and our hero first responders. As Terry said, I'm Captain Lexia Littlejohn, Commander for U.S. Coast Guard Sector Buffalo, and I want to tell you that it is my distinct honor to be here with you all today. I wanted to start off by acknowledging the event organizers, the Naval Park in Erie County, as well as all of the volunteers that are here, and all of those involved in bringing us all together today. I know it means a lot to all of the families as well as all of us, and we are grateful to you for your dedication. On this solemn day, admittedly, I am filled with emotion, as I know many of you are as well, as we all think back to 20 years ago today, when 2,983 of our fellow citizens died in the attacks in New York, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. As Senior Chief Sutton mentioned, among those that perished were 2 members of the U.S. Coast Guard, Reserve Petty Officer 2nd Class Vincent Dans, who was a member of the NYPD, and Reserve Petty Officer 1st Class Jeffrey Palazzo of the New York City Fire Department. Their names, along with the thousands of others who died on that day, are emblazoned in bronze parapet at the 9/11 Memorial in New York City. Their stories are forever emblazoned in our memories. But just as the pain, anguish, and the grief of that dark day in our history may never leave us, we also carry with us the ideals of hope, resilience, and unity, inspired by the brave men and women that responded in the chaotic aftermath of the attacks. And I can think of no other time, at least in my lifetime, that our country felt more united than after September 11th. I think each of us remembers where we were when the planes hit. And for those of us like myself who were in the Coast Guard, on that day, we watched in awe as the Coast Guard, along with commercial vessel operators, private boat owners, first responders, and ordinary citizens, carried out the largest maritime evacuation in history. When the towers came down, hundreds of thousands of people fled south to the water, to Battery Park, where they essentially became trapped. There was no way off of the island of Manhattan. Every other mode of transportation was completely shut down. Subways, buses, vehicles, bridges, tunnels, everything was shut down. So the only way off the island was by water. And of course, many people were understandably distraught. They wanted to get out of Ground Zero. They wanted to get out of Manhattan. And the Coast Guard saw this situation. At that time, no one knew if there was going to be another attack. People were actually jumping into the water trying to flee to safety. Boats were being overloaded to the point of dangerous conditions. So the Coast Guard saw this situation, and they put out a radio call, an all call to all boats. One of my mentors, Admiral Mike Day, who was a lieutenant at the time, put out the call. Any vessels in the area, this is the U.S. Coast Guard. If you are willing to help with the evacuation, come to Governor's Island. And so at that point, a fleet of all different types of boats converged on Lower Manhattan. There were ferries, tugboats, private boats, yachts, party boats. And over the course of the next 9 hours, those boats evacuated over 500,000 people from Manhattan. The 9/11 boat lift, as it is called, was the largest water evacuation in history, larger than the evacuation of the Allied soldiers from the beaches and harbors of Dunkirk in the north of France in World War II. And it was not planned. It was not orchestrated over days. It occurred organically because of the heroism of those boat captains and the crew and the New York and New Jersey first responders and ordinary citizens that helped each other load and unload the boats bound for safety. And it's that lesson of human kindness and the resilience of the human spirit I know that resonates with me, and I know that it resonates with many of you in the audience today. So as we take the time to remember our fallen civilian, military, and first responders that died on 9/11, as well as all of those who have sacrificed and died in the intervening years to prevent another 9/11, may we honor their sacrifice by taking care of each other as they have so bravely shown us how to do. Thank you, and Semper Paratus.
Always technical difficulties sometimes to work through. Hold on. Sometimes with decision making, you can do something, not do something, or wait. I'm going to wait this one out. See if it happens. Up, there we go. Can you hear me now? All right, very good. Just got a few minutes before we have our third bell ringing, but before that, I just want to allow, and if people want to move forward, we would have you come up shortly here. Oh, we have a third reader. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were already come up, sir. Come up. We got some more folks left. I'm very, very sorry. We have a few more to read. Thank you.
Sean P. Rooney. Sean met his wife Beverly when they were 16 years old at Canisius High School Old Dance. He was a skilled carpenter and loved to cook. His wife was the last person he spoke with, and the two were on the phone together when the South Tower collapsed. Beverly co-chaired the 9/11 Family Steering Committee in tribute to Sean. Tragically, Beverly died in the crash of Cologne Air Flight 3407 while traveling to Buffalo to mark what would have been Sean's 58th birthday. Charles J. Houston. Charles may have had a rough exterior, but his wife Linda said inside he was such a mush, especially around children. He loved his nieces and nephew and became like a second father to them. Milagros Romada. Millie was born in Puerto Rico, but loved living in Manhattan. She took the train to work every day with her husband, Joseph, an electrician who often worked in the World Trade Center. On 9/11, Millie was on the 98th floor of the South Tower and reached her husband on the phone after the second plane hit the tower. Joseph told her that he was downstairs and doing okay, and that he was coming to get her. Millie told him, "I'll see you later tonight." Joseph managed to escape. Millie did not. CSEA member Marion Rychek. Marty and his wife Joanne had just bought a puppy. On their first date, Marty took Joanne ice skating, although he was not a good skater. They married in 1969 and raised 2 children together. He called Joanne shortly before 9 a.m. on the day of the attacks to say that he was safely out of the building. However, he was last seen on the 78th floor of the South Tower helping some elderly co-workers evacuate before the second plane hit. Chris R. Hughes. Chris and his older brother, Keith, had always been close. They learned how to fly fish together, trained red-tailed hawks, and had dozens of pets together as children. As adults, they even worked together on the 89th floor of the World Trade Center's South Tower. In 1999, Keith transferred to a new job out of the World Trade Center, while Chris remained. William C. Hunt. Bill was talented in sports, including being selected MVP of his championship high school basketball team and as captain of his college's rugby team. Bill and his wife Jennifer had welcomed their first child only 15 months before 9/11. Kathleen A. Hunt Casey. Kathleen was described as a careful friend and a fantastic listener. She lived with her husband Kevin and their 14-year-old son Matthew. Kathleen's sister Maureen also worked in the building but was late for work that morning. Thomas E. Hines. Tom was an early riser who wanted to be in on the action. He grew up playing ice hockey, soccer, and baseball. He was cheerful, loving, generous, and kind according to his wife. Carolyn was 8 weeks pregnant when Tom died, and their daughter Olivia was born on April 2002.
Joe, 1 second. I just got to announce the next bill. I'll be right with you. The third bell, hijackers crash American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon. By 9:42, all flights in the United States were grounded, and by 9:45, the U.S. Capitol and the White House were evacuated. Thank you, Joe.
Michael P. Eichen. Michael had met his wife Monica on September 11th, 1999. On the morning of the attacks, after the first plane hit, he called his wife to tell her that while some of his coworkers had left the South Tower, he and a few others were trying to help a colleague who was hiding under a desk, paralyzed with fear. He had just celebrated his 37th birthday. Luis S. Inglaterra. Luis was described as a buttoned-up rocker, a precise and organized financial type, as well as a 30-year veteran of a rock band where he played both guitar and bass. He collected guitars and records and adored his 2-year-old son, Sam, who took after his father even at a young age. Doug J. Irang. Doug was a Tulane University alumni, class of 1991, who was active in the Zeta Beta Tau fraternity. He met his fiancée, Kristen, while riding to the train to work. They were engaged to be married on December 22nd, 2001. Kristen Irvine Ryan. Christy was remembered as an irresistible person who could convince her loved ones to do anything. She had married her lifelong sweetheart only 3 months prior to the attacks. She was a founding member of Secret Smiles, a group she started with her friends that delivered gifts to families in need. Margaret Wallier Seeliger. Margaret grew up in the Hamburg, Angola area as one of 9 children. She and her husband, Bruce, were dedicated to family, especially Margaret's 11 nieces and nephews. On the day of the attacks, Margaret was working on the 101st floor of the South Tower, where she was head of a student health division for Aon Insurance. Coworkers reported that Margaret gave up her place on a crowded elevator to make room for another colleague, telling them that she could take the stairs. Those in the elevator made it out safely. Margaret did not. Family remember Margaret as a fun-loving, bubbly person who was very smart, very hardworking, and a good friend, sister, and daughter. Margaret was honored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation as a hero of 9/11 World Trade Center attack for her bravery that day. Eric R. Thorpe. Rick was the star quarterback of his undefeated high school football team. He grew up in a close family and doted on his young daughter, Alexis. He was an active community volunteer. Jennifer L. Howley and her unborn child. Jennifer had faced many obstacles in her life, becoming deaf in her right ear as a toddler and losing her mother at a young age. Jennifer moved from Nebraska to New York at age 18, convinced that with a little fortitude and a lot of hard work that she would make it. She married her husband Brian in 1997, and their first child was due on January 2002.
Thank you, Joe. I now have the pleasure of introducing U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel retired Dan Walther, who commanded the Army National Guard troops at Ground Zero and will represent the thousands of New York National Guardsmen and troops who served at Ground Zero. Sir.
Terry, thanks for the promotion. Unfortunately, I didn't command everybody up there. Where were you when 9/11 hit? It's a question that we're all asked this time every year, and it's especially somber this year on the 20th anniversary. I do remember when the attacks took place. I was at that time in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, with a number of my associates. We were participating in a military training exercise at the time. The people I was with consisted of about 2/3 of the command and control structure of the New York Army National Guard for this exercise. We were ordered to return to where we were spending the evenings and change into our civilian attire and return to the base and await further orders. The journey back to New York took some time to arrange. As you all know, airspace was closed. Even to the military. We couldn't get from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, back to New York to support our own state. Several hours later, we were loaded onto buses. It was an extremely somber trip back to New York because we all knew that we were about to deploy on our newest mission, and one that was on our own home front. Many of the buses had friends or members on the buses had friends or family members that they knew were in Lower Manhattan or serving in the Pentagon. Being part of the 42nd Infantry Division, we arrived in New York City about 4 or 5 days later as a second wave of the forces for the recovery effort. And I personally remained there for about 3 weeks, performing mostly logistical tasks in support of our troops. Most of our troops were used for traffic control around Lower Manhattan, allowing the police officers to perform other necessary duties throughout the city and to deal with their own local losses. During the tour in Lower Manhattan, I was able to spend time with many of the first responders that were working, sifting through the debris. I was probably 30, 40 feet from the edge of the pile most days. Being able to serve with them and share in their sorrows was an extremely remembering time in my life. I had the opportunity on one day to be on an escorted tour through the basement of Building 5. Many of you may have heard the story of the sites that were there. It was one of the adjacent buildings that succumbed to substantial damage. We saw, however, one of the strangest and most surreal sights that one could ever imagine. It was the means of how the steel in the basement of this building had snapped. Every place you looked, you saw crosses. The steel had snapped and left a remembrance of all those victims of that tragic location. A few years later, I had the opportunity to return to New York City with my wife and several of my friends. And at the time, there was a temporary observatory platform just north of the Twin Towers trade site. While we were looking down into the cleaned up site, I was remembering the place where I typically would go in the mornings and support and be with many of those first responders working the pile. But something came over me. There was a smell in the air. And this was about 3 years later. Nobody else could smell what I could smell. I know to this day it was very psychological. That smell was remembering the sense that existed at the time of that tragic event. Those experiences that myself and many others saw during that event and the overwhelming repatriotism that swept this country for months and months to follow caused myself and many others to continue our support. And personally, a year later, I joined active duty. I retired in 2012 and continue my support of the defense of this great nation by working for the U.S. Department of Customs and Border Protection. God bless our service members, our first responders, and all of you for everything you do in the defense of this country. God bless America.
Thank you, Colonel. And your promotion was deserved. It's now my great pleasure and honor to introduce a great friend of the Naval Park, County Executive Mark Pollenkars, to offer a few remarks. Sir.
Thank you, Terrence. First off, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us here on this most solemn anniversary. I had a prepared speech, but truthfully, what I say does not matter when you hear the names and the stories of the individuals that were lost on that day. And we all remember exactly what we went through, but I cannot imagine what those individuals went through and the families and those who were hoping that their loved one would be eventually show up. So to the loved ones of those who lost someone on September 11th, please know you are still in our thoughts. They will never be forgotten. And you have our deepest condolences as people of this community. To the men and women of our first responders, our fire, and our police, we know that 344 members of the New York Fire Department and approximately 70 members of the New York Police, as well as the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, were lost on that day. And we remember and honor them because when everyone else was running from the towers, as was noted, fleeing from Manhattan, they were running into them. So we will never forget them, and we honor their service and their selfless sacrifice to our community. To the men and women who serve our country in the United States, and of course those abroad who put their lives at risk, we thank you for your service. And we will never forget your service to our country from the 20 years that have occurred since then, from the date of September 11th until we finally have pulled out of Afghanistan. And to each and every one of us, I want to thank you for being here today. As we remember, and we will never forget, the ones that lived through September 11th, we also look forward, and I see the young individuals who were not even born on that day. And I thank them for being here because you are the standard bearers who must continue to discuss what occurred on that day. It's hard to believe for some of us it's been 20 years, but for others, they never lived through it. For those who lived through it, we'll never forget it. For those who are the new generation, I thank you for being here today because you commemorate and honor those who were lost on that fateful day 20 years ago. May God bless the men and women who serve the United States of America. May God bless and watch over all of them, as well as our first responders as they go out on their calls daily. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
We will now hear from Dave Shank, the Commissioner of the Erie County senior services and a 32-year member of the Army Reserve. Dave.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Robert J. Himmel. Bob served in both Vietnam and Desert Storm as a pilot in the Air Force, attaining the rank of lieutenant colonel. After retiring, he joined the Defense Intelligence Agency as a civilian. Bob loved completing projects around his house, and he would beam each time he completed a project, no matter the size. He and his wife had one daughter and two granddaughters. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen N. Heimlin, Jr., Neil, as he preferred to be called, had told a friend what he wanted his epitaph to say, and I quote, "Born with the gift of laughter and a sense that the world was mad." He served in the Army for over 20 years and worked in the Pentagon. He loved history and literature and is remembered by his friends and family as a dedicated patriot. Peggy M. Hurt. Peggy had only worked in the Pentagon for just 2 weeks. She was a member of the Hurt Family Gospel singing group, along with her cousins and many other relatives. Her favorite song to perform was "The Battle Is Not Yours." "The Battle Is Not Yours, It's the Lord." David W. Lychek. Dave was described as a kind, good-hearted person who was an outstanding athlete. As the son of an Army officer, Dave was proud to serve his country as a civilian employee of the Department of the Army. He and his wife had 2 children that they loved to spend time with. Thank you.
Well, we have a few moments before our next bell. Just want to say thank you on behalf of the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park for the incredible support that you've given this park over the last several months to help secure our legacy here and our mission to preserve, honor, educate, and inspire. And that includes bringing together everyone in a common purpose to help secure our ships, preserve our ships, making sure that they don't sink. They were not built to last this long. The hulls are thin, and we got to repair them. And it's going to take money to do that. So thank you on behalf of everyone at the Naval Park for all you do as citizens to remember those who came before us and those that we hope to inspire, like these great Sea Cadets that will go forward and take our place someday. And one of the great things that we do here at the Naval Park is we like to continue to build the patriotism within our community. It's a very important element. We are also proud to announce, coming up in the following months, the introduction of some additions to our park. And one of those great additions will be our new African American memorial to those that have served since the Revolution for our country, and we're going to be breaking ground next year on that. So we're very, very excited, and we just want to make sure that you are aware of this great addition to the park. And lastly, before we continue on, I also just want to thank those of this generation since 9/11 who stepped forward. Folks like Pat Tillman, NFL star, multimillionaire, who decided, you know what? I've made my money. I need to give back to my country. So he went into the military, went into the Army, became an Army Ranger, and unfortunately he lost his life. but others have stepped forward as well. And so we're very, very proud of them to come forward. And if you're a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, our park proudly adorns one of the greatest monuments in the entire country, one of the first of its kind. We also honor our PTSD Memorial for those that suffered from post-traumatic stress going forward. And if you're a veteran out there that needs help and assistance, we have plenty of resources in Western New York, one of the greatest communities in this entire country to be a veteran, because we honor our veterans. And if you need help out there, please don't hesitate to ask. And that number is 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. If you're feeling stressed and you need help, we're there to help you. We also want to acknowledge that Angela M. Howitz, was extremely active in her church, and she volunteered to help those struggling with homelessness. Angela was a civilian employee for the Department of the Navy and was proudly considered a shipmate by her Navy coworkers. She loved her community and her job. And lastly, Brady K Howell. Brady was a fun-loving husband, son, brother, uncle, and friend. As a civilian employee for the Department of the Navy, Brady had recently earned a top-secret clearance, a designation he was proud and incredibly proud of. He was dedicated to his wife, to his faith, and to volunteering with the Boy Scouts of America. The fourth bell. The cell tower collapses. For the first time in known history, the White House requests the implementation of continuity of government measures. Again, we want to thank our pipe and drum corps from the Buffalo Fire Department. United Airlines Flight 93 crashes into South Pennsylvania after a struggle on board between a team of hijackers and the flight's passengers. I'd like to now introduce Brian Guy, who will continue to read some names.
As a result of their service at Ground Zero, many firefighters, police officers, other service members have lost their lives due to related illnesses. Several of them have been from Western New York, and if we've missed names, please know that we are monitoring that and let us know if we've missed one. New York State Trooper Scott P. Enzer, born in Buffalo and a graduate of Pioneer Central School, Scott joined the New York State Police in 1989 and served in many roles, including as a personal security guard for Governor Pataki during 9/11 and in the months that followed. He passed away after a long and courageous battle with illness due to his exposure at Ground Zero. New York State Trooper Jennifer Zarnecki. Trooper Zarnecki of Boston, New York, assisted in the search and rescue efforts in New York City as part of the New York State Police Detail. After 20 years of service, she retired due to worsening illness brought on by her time at Ground Zero and passed away on December 5th, 2020 of breast cancer. Firefighter Ronald J. Smeller. Ron was a lifetime member of the Ellicott Creek Volunteer Fire Company. When the statewide mutual aid request was made on 9/11, he went to Lower Manhattan to serve his fellow Americans. Ron passed away on March 10th, 2020 from a short illness associated with those who served at Ground Zero. He was 57 years old. Chief Dennis L. Allen. Chief Allen was an active member of the Evans Center Volunteer Fire Company for nearly 40 years. Having served as a fire department officer for nearly his entire firefighting and EMS career, he responded to Ground Zero twice following 9/11. He was dedicated to his wife Marlene, his sons Scott and Marcus, and granddaughter Avery. Dennis passed away on December 17th, 2011. Chief Irving A. Eisenberg. Irv was one of 4 Getchville firefighters who deployed to Ground Zero only 5 days after 9/11. The team rescued at least 3 people from the rubble. 16 years later, in 2017, Irv was diagnosed with a form of bone marrow cancer linked to Ground Zero exposure. He died at 55 years old on November 1st, 2019. Fellow firefighters remember him as a selfless leader in his role as Getchville Fire Chief. His wife Lisa described him as an EMT extraordinaire. And Irv would not let me go without stating this, but while Lisa was not his first wife, she was the best wife so far. FDNY firefighter Sean M. McCarthy. Sean was a proud member of the FDNY Engine Company 280 in Brooklyn. Firefighting was in his family's blood, as he and 5 brothers all followed their father into the FDNY. He loved serving his community and worked with professionalism and a quiet confidence. Sean spent countless hours searching and recovering at Ground Zero. He began displaying health problems shortly after being married in 2004 and was diagnosed with cancer in 2006. He died on May 27th, 2008. I'd like to now introduce Dan Frontiera, the president of the Western New York Iraq Afghanistan's Memorial and Iraq War veteran.
This is going to come straight from my heart, because I struggled like hell to try to write some remarks about this. At the end of August of 2001, I was a tourist. I was in New York City for a long weekend. We went up on the South Tower observation deck. And I thought, what an amazing view of our country. Man, what a friggin' place. I know where I was that day. You know where you were. Close to midnight on September 11th, 2001, I was deployed to an air base just north of New York City as a member of the New York Army National Guard. I served with Lieutenant Colonel Walther. We went into the city. The next day, New York State said, hey, bring everything you've got. You're a heavy engineer. Every bulldozer, every crane, everything you have. We got there and they said, you know what? Take it back home because we don't know what the hell to do. We went back in a couple weeks later and I was a platoon sergeant with a group of engineers, a bunch of 20-year-old kids, doing entry control points 3 blocks out from ground zero. We checked trucks coming out, going out to the dumps. We checked them coming back in. We were there the night that they took down the last piece of superstructure, that they opened up the last elevator shaft, and we were there when the FBI's dogs triggered going past FDN-wide equipment because there were human remains on it. I remember saying to my guys, you know, listen, I don't know when, I don't know where, but you can bet your asses we're going someplace. We're all citizen soldiers. Many of us have been on active duty. We came back, we were in our communities, just like everybody here, giving our time, volunteer firemen, brothers, friends, neighbors, like the 2,900 plus people we lost that day. Yep, we watched our friends deploy to Afghanistan. We knew our time was coming. We deployed to Iraq in 2004. Concept was very simple. We were going to take the battle back to those who brought it to us. Never again would we allow this to happen to our country on our soil. In some of the subordinate units, we lost guys that I was responsible for. Very close friends of mine fought in Fallujah, backing up the U.S. Marines. And on Veterans Day 2005, we landed at Fort Drum. We were home. By November 12th, I was home with my wife and my daughter. Wait a minute, what the hell? I was just in Iraq. Just like so many of our friends who were at Ground Zero, they were there one day and back home the next, and had never really left. I've struggled. I don't want to go through some of the memories. There's some things that trigger out and go through. And I retired in 2006. And in 2009 and 10, I was really struggling at a point. But I had this concept in my head. We needed to honor those who had fallen. We needed to honor our brothers and sisters from Western New York who were gone. This Vietnam vet show up one day at my work. Crazy old guy took me under his wing. Kind of helped move forward on a bunch of different things that have helped a ton of people. And then this great group of people said to me, you know what? We believe in this mission to honor those who have fallen. On September 12th of 2014, we dedicated those 3 red granite structures you see. They bear the names of 77 Western New Yorkers who died in combat, who died in service to our country. We've gotten to know the families. Gotten to know some of their stories. We've struggled with the fact that they're gone, as are the names that have been read off before them. The sunshine that's on our faces right now, they earned that. The people who died in the towers, the first responders, the people who came after them who have died from illness and disease, our brothers and sisters who have died in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other places. The 13 young heroes that recently perished in Afghanistan. we owe the rest of our lives to live for them in their memory. To never once not fly that flag. To always remember that we have we have a duty and a calling farther and higher above anything we have yet to experience. Because when our neighbors, our fellow Americans, ask for help, yeah, we're going. Like every hat I see out here right now. Like the guys in the back from Patriot Guard, the guys from Buffalo PD. And a quick side story, when we went to put that memorial up, the contractor laid down the center section of the A, laid it horizontal. It's approximately 6 tons. It's kind of tough to lift. It was Friday, September 11th, 2014. Guys from Buffalo Fire had just finished up a memorial service. They were walking back to their cars over here. Hey, what's going on? Hey, we're kind of screwed. We have a problem. We can't lift this. Contractor's crane isn't big enough. Typical Buffalo fashion. Typical Western New Yorker. Hey, we got you. Commissioner, they turned around and they called Rescue 1. Yeah, and about 10 minutes later, this 6-ton piece of granite bearing the names of our guys was lifted up into place. Because that's what we do. That's what we do as Americans, we do as Buffalonians, and we remember those who have come before us. It's my honor to have 3 good friends, Rob Kohout, Paul Martin, Connie Ptsd, come up here and read off the names of the 77 individuals, our brothers and sisters, who we've lost in service to our country since September 11th of 2001.
The following names are from Iraq, the Iraq War. Brian K. Baker, Aram J. Bass, Daniel J. Beard, Tamario D. Burkett, Charles E. Bush Jr., Charles S. Cooper Jr., Jonathan M. Cote, Dwayne A. Covert Jr., Terrence K. Crow, Jason C. Denfriend, Robert V. Duranda, Christopher W. Dill, Jason L. Dunham, David Evans Jr., Stephen C. Ganshevsky, Carrie Ann Gasowitz, Lauren E. Henry Jr., Albert R. Jacks, Travis C. Krieg, Jeff LeBrun, Howard S. March Jr., James C. Madison, Patrick W. May, David M. McKeever, Heath A. McMillan, Eric J. Orlowski, Jacob M. Pfister, David L. Roustum, Benjamin C. Schuster, Daniel J. Shaw, David W. Texter, Michael L. Williams.
Mark A. Bradley, Andrew David Beerers, Sean M. Clemens, Heath N. Craig, Alan N. Dickus, David M. Hillman, Brett E. Gornowitz, Christopher T. Howick, Timothy L. Johnson, Jason M. Johnston, Aaron M. Kenefick, Michael S. Lemertz, Michael M. McCreevy Jr., Raymond J. Munden, Michael D. Rowe, Timothy G. Saranowski, Aaron M. Swanson, Peter P. Titz II, Blake D. Whipple, Kevin W. White, William R. Billy Wilson III, Philip L. Witkowski, Frank J. World,
The following are the names of our local service members who are in active duty and passed while serving in the military. Robert A. Badger, Jordan D. Bunker, Kevin S. Casey, Joseph M. Clooney, Scott Coe, John J. Coploys Jr., Trevor T. Cook, James K. Crawford, Nathan Donaldson Jr., Christopher K. Hines, Dave Iknewski. I'm sorry, it's Ikowitz. Wesley S. Gordon, Joshua Grotke, Richard D. Ricky Jones, Michael A. Kloss, John J. Lavellis, Ian Patrick Morgan, William C. Sager Jr., Austin J. Sampson, Shayna B. Schmigel, John J. Shepard Jr., Jenna Lee Sigelski Wilcox, Mark A. Spence, Nicholas Volger.
an immense plume of toxic dust throughout lower Manhattan. Tens of thousands of people, including many first responders, have reported long-term medical conditions such as respiratory disease or cancer as a result of inhaling the dust. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you to please stand to render our final respects to our honor guard, who will now retire the colors.
Order! Arms! Retrieve the colors! Honor guard! Forward! March!
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated for one more second and we'll be on our way today. We hope that today's ceremony has paid tribute to 9/11, to those who lost their lives that day, to the loved ones they left behind, to those who served as first responders at Ground Zero, to the Pentagon, and to those in Shanksville, and to those who were forever impacted by the events that day. Today, maybe we be reminded of the incredible privilege it is to be an American citizen and to appreciate the rights and responsibilities that we bear. We invite you to stay and enjoy the Buffalo Niagara Concert Band, which will play until 11 a.m. There's also a Touch a Truck happening, or you can enjoy the Naval Park and the Children's Museum with what we call a pay-as-you-wish admission. I also want to thank our board members in attendance today. I see Maurice Nalen and also Bill Barton. Do we have any other board members here today? Can't see any. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attendance. If you want to give back to your community, we encourage you to find ways to do so. We have a few opportunities today, including a blood drive with the American Red Cross in our hangar building that is accepting walk-in appointments. We are also hosting a food drive through the end of the week for Feed More Western New York in the Naval Park gift shop. Ladies and gentlemen, may God continue to bless America, and may we continue to honor the incredible service, sacrifice, and loss that is our 9/11 legacy into the future. Thank you. God bless America.